All right, we're live. Let's go and let some people get in here. Go ahead and retweet this link real quick on Twitter as well. Man, we got a lot to talk about today, that's for sure.
You can tell by my hat, I'm already ready for basketball season at this point.
Hey, NBA season is right around the corner, and if we drop another game week, it might flip the script and turn the page on the football season. All right, let's go and let's get some people tuned in right now to the show. Like I said, we got a lot to talk about this week. Anytime they say when the team wins, there's less to talk about. When the team loses, there's a way more to talk about. And right now with the 49ers, we got a lot to get into for sure. Obviously the big loss to the Cardinals, another fourth quarter lead blown for the Niners. Seahawks coming up, a short turnaround on Thursday Night Football. Injuries team, they're never ending, right? So we got a lot to get into. What I want to start with today, real quick, the Jets fired their head coach, Robert Saleh. This is a big shocker today, I think, across the sports world, the NFL world. Robert Saleh, for those who don't know, which I'm sure everyone does know if you're a 49er fan, former defensive coordinator for the 49ers, a really, really good one. And no one was expecting this to happen today. Kyle Shanahan was asked about it, and he said he reached out to Robert Saleh via text that the two haven't talked yet, but he thrown off by the news too, given the fact that the Jets are still in the running for the top seed in the AFC East. They got a big Monday night showdown against the Bills. It's a team that's really good defensively. Offensively, definitely has some struggles, in which we can blame a lot of that on Nathaniel Hackett. I think NFL fans are very familiar with him. But what was your reaction today when you saw the news?
My first initial reaction, I told you in the morning, was John Lynch needs to pick up the phone and make that phone call to get him back. But obviously, Michael Silver, he reported later on that Saleh is basically just going to take the rest of the year off, spend time with his family and his kids, and just kind of like take it all in, get paid by the Jets for not doing anything. I mean, it was definitely surprising considering that the team was only off to a 2-3 start in a pretty competitive division, I would say, this year, with the Bills being only 3-2 with their loss on Sunday against Houston. But I think this just came down to, what Aaron Rodgers really wanted. And I think there was some friction these last couple of losses that the Jets had that Aaron Rodgers just couldn't shake. And, the ownership kind of took it upon their responsibility to listen to their player instead of listening to the coach. There was also rumors about Saleh possibly demoting Nathaniel Hackett, and I don't think that was going really well.
And that was going to happen today too, which is crazy.
Yeah, so I think that also had a lot to do with it. I think the owner, Woody Johnson, he didn't want to, stir up any problems with Aaron within the media, because we all know how involved Aaron Rodgers is with the media. Obviously, he has the Pat McAfee show every Tuesday morning that he goes on. So I think they wanted a situation where he didn't air out his grievances about his coach, so they had to make this move.
Yeah, the right move definitely would have been the one that Saleh wanted to do, which is to let go of Nathaniel Hackett, because this offense, as I mentioned, 100%. Has been struggling this season. And, people want to put some of the blame on Aaron Rodgers. Like, look, Aaron Rodgers is over 40 years old, right? He's coming off an Achilles tear. No one is expecting him to be prime Aaron Rodgers, but all things considered, I think he's looked pretty decent this year. I think they got to get their run game more involved. You got two solid running backs in Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, who they're not using enough right now. And their defense has kept them in games. So definitely some shocking news. Robert Saleh, would definitely solve a lot of the Niners' problems on defense right now. And
built that defense. He built that defense.
He did. And, let's get into that right now, because while the Jets have their struggles, the Niners have plenty on their plate that they got to deal with. Let's start with this injury update. As I mentioned, Niners, it's never ending. Talanoa Hufanga, wrist injury. He has some torn ligaments in his wrists. He's going to be out, they said, at least a month. So there's a very good chance he goes on the IR. This sucks because he just came back a couple weeks ago after, a torn ACL last season. And so a couple games in, going back on the IR likely. Jake Moody, this is a big loss for the Niners, even though, Moody has his ups and downs. We know he's still a big part of what the Niners do. He has a high ankle sprain. We saw that in the last game. He was making a tackle on I think it was on the kick return, right? And he rolled his ankle up and had to leave the game. Wisnowski ended up making a field goal for the Niners, which was nice, but Moody's going to be out likely a few weeks now, and Niners already signed a backup kicker. And then Travarius Ward, he suffered a knee injury in the last game, and Kyle Shanahan did not discount the fact that Ward could potentially go on the IR too, which is another big loss for the Niners. So this defense already missing, Dre Greenlaw obviously has had some struggles in all three phases of their defense, right? The front line, the linebacking group, and the secondary. Now Hufanga's out, Travarius Ward potentially out. So, it's next man up, right, for this team. We're going to see more of Malik Mustafa, the rookie safety, who's looked pretty solid at times, actually, really good. So, opportunity for him to like step up and make a name for himself. But, what do you expect to how are the Niners going to continue to overcome these injuries? Because they've already been struggling this year, obviously 2-3 for a reason. Injuries play a factor in that, but how are they going to get past these now?
Well, if we know one thing about this team since 2019, they get hurt a lot. They practice hard throughout the entire week, and guys tend to go down because of the way that their habits are built, which is good, but at the end of the day, it might end up costing you some games here and there, and that's what we've seen over the last couple of years with the 49ers. I personally am excited to see Malik Mustafa and Renardo Green step up in that secondary. I feel like we need like a jolt right now that we haven't gotten from our veteran players, which is as crazy as that sounds. Outside of Fred Warner, no other veteran player has really stood out on the defensive end this year. That includes Nick Bosa, who, is arguably the top 2 or 3 best pass rushers in the NFL. So I'm excited. I'm excited for sure. I think that, Renardo Green, I talked to you about this on Sunday. He's probably our best press coverage corner, right? So he's a guy that can, stay stride for stride for like with the best of them in the NFL. You name him. Obviously, this week he's going to have to deal with DK Metcalf, most likely if Ward can't go, which is going to be a huge assignment for him because Ward did an amazing job on DK Metcalf in the 2 meetings last year with Seattle. So
he's owned DK in the last couple of meetings for sure.
Yeah, for sure, and he's gotten into his head, most definitely. So, I'm excited, but I'm also interested to see what type of fight that the defense comes out with this time because we know the offense can move the ball, and we'll obviously talk about that a little bit later on. But our genesis, the genesis of all our Super Bowl contending teams has always been defense. We have to be at least top 5 or top 10 defensively in pretty much like every category to have a chance every single year. So it's tough. It's only 5 games in, but it's good that these injuries are happening earlier rather than later, obviously. If this was something that was happening in week 14 and week 15 and we're struggling to like make the playoffs, I would be super concerned. But I think the fact that we're, going into week 5 here, I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah, but this team can never catch a fucking break, man, when it comes to injuries. You mentioned since 2019 we've been dealing with this. Like, I don't think I bet you if you look at the injury reports from the last 5 years, no team has had more injuries than the 49ers. And they often come at like critical times too, right? We can talk about obviously Dre Greenlaw, Jimmy G, Trey Lance, you talk about George Kittle, Debo, Trent Williams. These are just like recent guys, right? I'm talking about from the last couple of years. CMC obviously being out. So
Brock Purdy.
Purdy, right, in the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago. Yep. So countless injuries for the 49ers. It's bad luck, and you hope for like the football gods to be on your side at one point in time. I don't know what the Niners did in a past lifetime that's fucked them over for so long because it's been bad, man. I'm sick of this shit. Like,
yeah, that's really bad.
And it does come at a critical point for this team because they are 2-3 right now. And these next 3 games, I mean, the Seahawks, which we'll get into in a little bit, and then the Chiefs and the Cowboys, that's not an easy slate by any means going into the bye week. So, defense definitely going to have to, next man up mentality for the guys that are out. But, we got to talk about the offense too, because 49ers fell 24-23 to the Cardinals. A lot went wrong in this game to answer that question shortly. And we're going to start with the offensive struggles because there was a lot in this game. So Niners were up by 13 points in the second half of this game. In the fourth quarter, they were up by 13 points. Another double-digit lead blown by the Niners. And remind me, I have a fun fact since I'm sure we all love facts. Get this. Since Kyle Shanahan became the head coach of the 49ers in 2017, he has blown 18 double-digit leads. That is the most in franchise history. And the next closest person with 8 blown leads was his father, Mike Shanahan.
Mike Shanahan.
He has 10 more than him.
Runs in the blood, man. It runs in the blood.
It does, and that's, if there's any list you don't want to be at the top of it, it's that one. And so, this Niners team, second time this season, they've blown a fourth quarter lead, with the first one being to the Rams, obviously, or fourth quarter lead, sorry. First one being to the Rams in week 2 or week 3, sorry. But man, let's look at some of these struggles that, like I said, the Niners had. So 1 for 6 in the red zone in that game. They ranked 29th in red zone touchdown offense this season. The only 3 teams that are worse than them. Can you guess those 3 teams? I'll let you take a crack at it.
I think Kansas City is one of them, because it seems like they're always trying to kick field goals within the 5. I would say Carolina is probably another one.
Incorrect.
Chicago?
No, I'll give you the other 2 teams. They just played this past weekend, and they're both in the AFC East. It's the Dolphins and the Patriots.
How could I forget?
Yeah, those 2 teams obviously really bad this year, but the Chiefs is surprising, right? Because they're 5-0, so it doesn't even matter for them because they still find ways to win games. And they were actually behind the Niners, or ahead of the Niners before the game yesterday, but then they ended up dropping to the 30th spot. But yeah, the Niners, 1 for 6 in the red zone in this game. A couple of key things that come to mind for them. Their fourth possession in this game, they had a good 6-minute drive, got all the way down to the goal line area. And on third and goal, Purdy missed an open guy coming across the field. I think it might have been Jordan Mason. Didn't hit him for whatever reason, ended up throwing it out of bounds after scrambling a bit. And then on 4th and goal, Niners at the 1.5-yard line. I don't know why Kyle Shanahan didn't go for it. You have so many weapons. You have a good quarterback. You have Jordan Mason, all the guys I can name, right? And they decide to kick the field goal. It's like we talk about this, like in moments like that is where you have to be aggressive and you have to put teams away, right? And the Niners, 100%. For whatever reason, didn't decide to do that. And here's we talk about red zone struggles. Here's what Brock Purdy had to say after the game about their red zone struggles.
Collectively, as a unit, offensive unit, once we get down there, like all of us, our mindset, man, has to be we got to punch this in. Obviously, we know we can settle for a field goal, but we got to hold ourselves to a higher standard and cross the goal line.
But this hasn't been going on just this season, right? That's something that's been the problem last year too. It's getting down really good drives, moving the ball, and then failing to finish with 6. And this season, it's biting them in the ass, right? Because here we are, 2-3. 4 possessions in the second half. Look at how they went. Interception by Purdy, turnover on downs, fumble by Mason, interception by Purdy. We only had 4 possessions in the second half, and that's how all of them went. No points in the second half at all. I mean, just a terrible offensive showing from the Niners in this game. What was your reaction as you were watching this game unfold? Any key moments, key plays that stood out to you that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, obviously probably the biggest thing that happened was Jake Moody going down. And after that, I think I texted you at that time. I was like, these guys are fucked now. They're going to have to go for it on 4th down and go for long situations that Kyle Shanahan does not excel at as a play caller whatsoever. And he has no confidence sometimes to go for it in certain situations. So, but the other thought that crossed my mind is, we're missing Christian McCaffrey hard. He was the one that was closing games for us last year. He was the one that was, padding the stats, busting open wide open runs, not turning the ball over, not fumbling at the 5-yard line like Jordan Mason did in such a critical time, right? So, this team has been missing Christian McCaffrey, but it kind of reared its ugly head on Sunday, where we needed 5 or 6 yards and we just couldn't get it with Jordan Mason or with Brock Purdy, scrambling for his life like he always does. It seems like almost every single game. Mm-hmm. And that, we talked about it this morning too. Like the scrambles have really hurt Brock's game as well because he doesn't have time to set his feet.
Do you think he's scrambling a little too much?
I think he is. I think he's scrambling way too much this season. Like, obviously, like you want to be able to be elusive, right? You want someone that has mobility. That's kind of like how the game has translated for the quarterback position nowadays. But it's really hard to go through your progressions if you're running for your life after a second and a half, because that's literally what
Mhm.
he gets. He gets about a second and a half to 2 seconds before he has to pretty much like take off and make a decision. So we don't want a situation where obviously, we've seen this in the past with Jimmy Garoppolo. He couldn't scramble, but he would try to like fight for his life. He looked like Bambi back there in the pocket sometimes when he was just like, sidestepping and, and
Except
shifting his
less
way through.
less shifty than Bambi.
Oh, way, way less shifty. I mean, I could probably shift faster than Jimmy did in the pocket, but yeah, man, we definitely need to see more out of the offense in terms of you know, completing drives. And I feel like, Christian McCaffrey last year, that's what he was so good at is, you give him an inch, he could take it a mile, right? And I mean, I think you kind of feel the same way, right?
Look, 100%, like, not having Christian McCaffrey hurts, right? But even with him being out, this offense, yes, it's struggled, but right now they rank 10th in the NFL in scoring offense with about, I think, 25 points a game. And when you're missing the offensive player of the year, reigning offensive player of the year, 25 points a game is still good. And when we talk about everything we are right now with the struggles this team has and not being able to convert in the red zone more, they're probably like a couple plays away from being a 30 points per game team right now. And so
100%.
it's lack of execution. And to Raman's point here, he says they lack a guy that can't create or that can create separation in the red zone. That's supposed to be Brandon Ayuk. He's one of the best route runners. And look, he finally had a good game. Thank you, Brandon Ayuk, for finally showing up. I'm sure all his fantasy managers are happy with how he performed. 8 receptions, 147 yards. It was a big game for Ayuk.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to try to get him in more involved in the red zone offense for sure, because right now it's been a lot of going to Kittle, which has worked at times and other times it hasn't. Jennings, I think they got to work on getting him, more involved. Obviously, we saw a couple of weeks where he had a really good stretch, but in this one, he only had one catch. Debo only one catch in this game too. So Kyle Shanahan's got to figure out ways to get all these guys involved, and particularly, obviously, as we keep mentioning, in the red zone area, right? Because that's what it's all coming down to for this team, is not being able to convert. And Jordan Mason, the fumble was obviously a very, very bad one because of the timing of it. And I think he only had 14 carries in this game, 89 yards. He needs to get more touches. I mean, week 1 of the season, he had 28 or 29 carries, which is the most any running back has ever had in the Kyle Shanahan era. So why is he only getting 14 carries when he's been so good this season, right? I think it's almost as if like we're relying on Brock a little too much. And look, Brock has been really good. This was probably his worst game of the season. I mean, he went 19 of 35 in this game, 244 yards, a touchdown and 2 picks, and
Yeah.
the first pick, he kind of stepped up in the pocket. He didn't see the defender, I guess, right in front of him. Deflection, interception, right? It wasn't a terrible throw or a terrible decision. It's kind of just like an unlucky play. And then on the last one, the Cardinals send 6 and the Niners only had 5 blocking, and Jordan Mason picked up the wrong guy on the blitz, unfortunately. And, Purdy's humble. He put it on himself, saying he should have got rid of the ball quicker, which maybe he could have, but Mason picks up that blitz. That ball gets to Kittle, and maybe that drive continues. So it wasn't a terrible game from Purdy, but he definitely could have been better. It's not even the interceptions. I think it just sometimes the open guys are there, and I think he's just not getting it to them for whatever reason. So I want to see him pick things up. To Munpreet's point here, maybe they're worried about getting Mason injured if they run into the ground like they did with CMC. It's a good point, but I think I think 25 carries a game for Mason is not a whole lot, right? Because you're talking about a young guy who doesn't have a lot of mileage on his legs right now. It's not like that's Christian McCaffrey in that spot, right? So lean on him. You give Isaac Rendo maybe 5 carries a game or so, right? Work him in like a little bit, but they definitely in more touches. I'm not saying 30 plus every single game, but I think right around that 25 carry mark is solid for him. So
Well, just to
Def-
kind of like touch on that point too, right? I think because it was a short week, they thought that they could kind of get away with giving Mason, 15 touches because that's pretty much what he got. He had one reception, I think, and he had 14 carries. So I think
Mhm.
they were thinking a little too far ahead this week because they knew the game against Seattle was going to be super physical and they were going to have to lean on the running game, especially going up to Seattle. You always have to lean on your running game because of the noise and the hard counts that they have to do to like combat the 12th man as they like to call it up there in Seattle. So I think they were over prepping for a situation that hadn't occurred yet. I
Mhm.
think had they ran Mason 20 times in this game, we probably would have ended up winning, even if it would have been a nail biter. I mean, the guy breaks 10 plus yard runs. It seems like every other snap or every other carry that he gets. He's I think he leads the league in yards after first contact as well. So you got to rely on your horse for sure. I understand them not wanting to get Mason hurt and then having to rely on Garendo and Patrick Taylor Jr. But you know we have this guy right now. We talked about it last year and the year before. This guy was a baller, right? He could definitely run downhill. It's just Kyle Shanahan never really put his trust until he had to this season. So I'm interested
Mhm.
to see this Thursday what they're going to do with him.
Yeah, we'll get into the Thursday game for sure. Let's quickly talk about the Niners' defensive struggles too, because as bad as they were on offense, for most of the game they were okay, and then fourth quarter is where the collapse happened. I mean, you know, on the run game, right? Kyler Murray. This is something we talked about last week. They suck at playing against mobile quarterbacks, and Kyler Murray on their second, third play of the game houses a 50-yard rush touchdown, and he was pointing at it from the 45-yard line.
He was gone.
You know how fast you have to be to call that shit from the 45-yard line, saying like, "Yeah, I'm taking this shit to the house." And no one, I don't think anyone touched him. His little read option, he held on to it, boom, he was gone. And so the Niners found themselves in an early hole. But it wasn't just that, right? James Conner, for most of the game, they had him bottled up, and then fourth quarter, when the Cardinals start to get a little comfortable, he breaks off. I think about 50 to 60 of his yards came in the fourth quarter.
In the fourth. Yeah.
Nine. He forced 9 missed tackles. That's a lot. I think that was the fourth highest in the NFL this season among all qualified players. But it wasn't just the run game, right? Like these receivers from the Cardinals were just running out into the flat 6-7 yards, running out to the outside corners, and I think the Niners were in a zone coverage, and these guys were just sitting there. Kyler just hitting them. He wasn't doing anything crazy. Guys are just running out, getting open, and Niners were playing. It seemed like the way they made it seem is like they were playing like in a prevent kind of defense, right? And because of how easily the Cardinals are moving the ball, and so they come down, they get a touchdown, go for two, 23-21. And then obviously the Mason fumble, they come back and they get the field goal. And that's when they end up taking the lead. But it was just not the typical Niners defense, again, like we're used to seeing. But unfortunately, it's become the defense that we're used to seeing this season, right? Where they're not getting stops. And this was a big thing I wanted to point out. Teams are converting on third down 43% of the time against the Niners. That's ridiculous. And when you can't get off the field, your guys get tired. It leads to long drives, and it usually leads to points for the other team. So, it was interesting. Like I said, for most of the game, they were doing okay. And then that fourth quarter, they just collapsed. What were some of the things that stood out to you in this game defensively?
I think they had a good game plan, kind of like how Nick Bosa pointed out in the first half. I mean, they were getting stops, they were forcing, the Cardinals to make mistakes. Obviously, in the first half, we had the touchdown return by Diamador Lenore, which is really nice. It was good to see special teams finally make an impact
A good play for us.
A good for once, right? For once they did something right this season. And the Bosa pick, I mean, that was like chef's kiss. Like I was like, oh my God, like, this could be a blowout at this point. But it just kind of felt like after Moody got hurt, everyone just was a little shook, not just on the offensive side, but on the defensive side as well, I feel like. And I think it was in the back of the defense's mind that they have to get this stop because the offense might struggle if they can't kick field goals. They'll have to go for it on fourth down. So they don't want to put their offense in that position either.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just one of those things where these guys didn't take it play by play like they should have, right? They had good execution the first 3.5 quarters, I want to say, and that the second half of that fourth quarter, I mean, it was terrible. Like you said, Connor breaking those those tackles to like basically make up for his shitty fantasy day that he was going through up until that fourth quarter. The craziest stat that I read going into that fourth quarter was Kyle Shanahan had never blown a 10-point lead going into the fourth. He's blown double-digit leads in the fourth, but if he's up 10 going into the fourth, that was the first time ever he blew a lead as a coordinator and as a coach. So, this season has been a lot of firsts for us on the defensive side. We talk a lot of shit about Steve Wilkes last year, but Steve Wilkes at least had this team playing disciplined football on the defensive end, sans the fourth quarter of that Super Bowl. But for most of the season, I mean, we were really good. Obviously, we could have had more pass rush last season, and this year the same theme continues, right? We just can't get to the quarterback. Nick Bosa, I feel like, has been a ghost these last couple of weeks, not being able to get any sacks in critical moments when we need him. So
it's funny you say
that's
that
kind of like my
because
thought right there.
That's what I was thinking too, is like we're not getting to the quarterback enough. But check this out. Right now, we're tied for 7th in the NFL with 15 sacks. So we're tied in the sacks, and then we are 5th in sack percentage at 9.5%. So the numbers show that we actually are getting to the quarterback, but it doesn't seem like it. And maybe it's because we've been so spoiled with some of these really good defenses that we've had over the past couple of years. And Nick Bosa obviously had a DPOY season, right? Like and where he had like 18, 19 sacks. And so we were used to seeing guys in the front like dominate. And even though, I don't know where this 15 sacks number is coming from, because it doesn't seem like we're getting there. And
probably had 14 of them last week against the Patriots.
Yeah. And you brought up the point about Shanahan. This was the stat on that 38-0 before the Cardinals game, where they were
that was the stat.
Up 10 going into the fourth. Shout out to Adrian for that one. And he brought up the point about miscommunication in the secondary. I think about the play 4th and 5 late in the game. This is the play where I was like, all right, they're fucked. They're losing this game. It's 4th and 5. Niners send a blitz, and Kyler Murray fading back throws a lob of a pass to Marvin, who comes down on Isaac Yiadom. Once that catch happened, I was like, all right, this is not going to end well. At that point, I was like, this game is, we're about to blow this. And so, Kyle Shanahan, I mean, we can get into him. Obviously, like we could do a whole hour on Kyle Shanahan. Like he's not good when he has leads. We know about the 3 Super Bowls, 2 with the Niners, 1 with the Falcons, obviously. The Niners, I agree with this one, Bree. Like I don't think we blitz enough. I would like to see more blitzes from us too, and force the quarterbacks to get rid of the ball quickly, right? I think and it's funny because
sorry.
Go ahead.
What is it about Kyle not being able to close? Like, what do you see, like you personally, like what do you see that he's not picking up or he's not changing about like his scheme, about like his decision making? Like, what can you pinpoint it to?
I think it comes back to lack of aggressiveness, right? And we talk about being able to put teams away early, especially. When you settle for field goals early in the game, it costs you later on in the game. And that was evident in this one. And then when Kyle gets a lead, he gets conservative, right? Again, he's going to run the ball. He's not going to get creative. He's going to keep things simple at that point, when it's like, hey, this is where you need to be extra aggressive, be extra creative. And hey, if it's 3rd and 7, don't run the ball and try to kill clock. Throw that ball across that line to gain, right? Put the ball in the hands of your best players. And you have a lot of them, whether it's Kittle or Ayuk or Jennings, like get the first down and then go kill the clock, right? Don't just rely on, hey, we're going to run this, kill another minute off the clock and let our defense be able to get the stops to win the game. Because that has not only this season, but in years past too at times, right? So I think he needs to go for the kill more. He needs to have more of that dog in him as a coach, right? Be able to put teams away, because when you don't do that, that's what happens. Teams hang around and then they end up being able to steal games. So a bad loss for the Niners. And, here's a good point. Kyle's problem is that he realizes on his schemes he relies on his schemes instead of fundamental football.
Yep.
We always talk about Kyle Shanahan being this great offensive mastermind, and it doesn't always show because of his decision making, right? So I think it's like we talked about this, I think, in our first show, is sometimes he just needs to go back to the basics, simple plays, whether it's sending one guy on a deep route, one guy across the middle, one guy on the corner, just simple things, that can get guys open. Send Kittle out on the flat, 7-8 yards, boom, right there. Travis Kelce does it every single fucking game. You know what I mean?
I was just about to say that.
He does it every single game. So it's simple things that the Niners need to do. And I feel like these are easy things that they can fix. They just have to address them. And they're going to have to do them quick because Thursday Night Football, quick turnaround for this team. We got the Seahawks in Seattle.
Here we go.
This is the Seahawks team that is 3-2 right now. Their first 3 wins, they beat the Broncos, Patriots, and the Dolphins. 3 teams that they probably should have won because Broncos, it was a first game for Bo Nix, a rookie quarterback he's looked better now, right? But it was his first career game in the NFL. The Patriots, obviously one of the worst teams in the NFL. Dolphins didn't have Tua. So, they got their first 3 wins, and then they lost to the Lions, which is not a bad loss at all because that's a good team. And then they lost to a Giants team that didn't have Malik Neighbors. That's a game they probably should have won, and I'm sure they felt like that. So they're coming off back-to-back losses. Niners coming off back-to-back losses. This is going to be a really, really tough game for the 49ers in Seattle. We know about the rivalry for the past decade or so. This is a tough place to play for the Niners. And whoever wins this game is going to take the lead in the division. Right now, it's the Seahawks because they have the 3 wins versus 2. But if the Niners win this, they can take the lead in the division. And it begs the question, is this a must-win game for the 49ers? Nick Bosa spoke about this today.
How much more pressure is on this game given that you have lost 2 divisional games?
It's a lot of pressure. It's not a must-win because I'm stealing Kyle's team meeting thing because technically your season's over if it's a must-win, but it definitely feels like it's we're treated that way.
I feel like Nick Bosa should have been like a yoga instructor or something. He's just so calm, cool, and collected in interviews.
Yeah, he seems like his emotions are never there. Like that's him probably excited, sad, mad, angry. Like you can never tell with him. But hey, he said it's not a must-win game because you say that when your season's on the line. But let me start with you on this one. Do you think this is a must-win game for the 49ers? Because they lose this game, they go down 0-3 in the division, which is going to be really, really hard to come back from. And that's going to be a 3rd straight loss. And then following that, they face the Chiefs and then the Cowboys. So what do you think? Is this a must-win game for the 49ers?
Well, I wouldn't want to call it a must-win, but given that they're 2-3 on the season, they already lost 2 divisional games. They go down 0-3, they're fucked. They're not going to win the NFC West. They might not even make a wild card spot if they go down to 2-4 on the record. So definitely a must-win game against a divisional opponent. And it'll be a big morale boost as well going into that Chiefs game the following week. So, listen, I feel like the team really hasn't had much to celebrate this season in terms of hang your hat on a win type of situation. We got beat pretty bad by Minnesota. I feel like even though we beat the Jets pretty bad, that game was kind of like in the balance up until like the midway of that 3rd quarter because we just couldn't get any offense going. But divisional opponent on a short week, you're going to have to pull out all the stops for this one. Like Shanahan's going to have to be in his bag. Sorensen's going to have to control that defensive front, make sure that they get pressure on Geno Smith, who does make mistakes. He will make mistakes for sure. He's a guy that gets really pass happy and really aggressive sometimes, and it costs him and the team. So, we've seen it in the past with Geno in the playoffs and also in the regular season the last couple of years. We can definitely get to him.
He does make mistakes, but, right now this season he's actually looked pretty solid. So first in the NFL in passing yards with 1,466 passing yards, a 72% completion percentage, which is tied for second in the NFL. He's averaging nearly 295 passing yards a game, 93 passer rating. So, Geno has its ups and downs, but this season, for the most part, he's been pretty locked in.
Definitely, but I don't think he's seen a defense that could be as good as the 49ers defense that he's going to see on Thursday night. So that also has a lot to do. Could be, yeah. But But I think this is a get right game for the defense. I think this is a get right game for Kyle Shanahan and for Brock Purdy, specifically. I think they just got to go back to the basics, like you said, run the ball 30 times. You're going to win this game.
Mhm.
But definitely a must win, in my opinion. If we win this game, you carry some momentum going against the Chiefs, which is going to be something that we talk about next week, obviously. But um, I think they have all the ingredients to have a win for sure. It's just about putting everything together, which they haven't done for 4 quarters in any loss this season.
Yeah, to Papa Jay's point here, the good thing for the Niners is the NFC West is very weak this year, and this is something you and I were
Yep,
talking about pregame, right? Cardinals are an okay team. They're, some weeks they look good, some weeks they look all right, and they'll probably get better week by week, but like they should still be probably the third team in the division. The Rams obviously dealing with a lot of injuries. It's
they're
funny to say
done.
that because we fucking lost to them, but Puka's out, Cooper Cup is out. They've had offensive line struggles. Some guys on the fence in the secondary has been out. So, this division is pretty open. It'll probably come down to the 49ers and the Seahawks, which is, again, why this game is so pivotal, right? Because
Yep,
you lose, you go down 0-3, and then they have the first game up on you. And if you win, now you get your first win in division. And then if it comes down to you and the Seahawks in a tiebreaker, games like these are critical, right? But by no means is this game going to be easy. And I don't think any of us
no,
Niner fans out there should, be expecting a win. Like, you can obviously hope for it, and that's what you're looking forward to. But this is going to be a tough game because this rivalry is real with the 49ers and the Seahawks. We know about the 12th man. Like, yeah, people might say it's corny, this and that, but that stadium gets very loud. Niners obviously coming off short rest, same with the Seahawks, but this Seahawks team, they rank seventh in total offense this season with 376 yards a game. They're 11th in scoring, so right behind the 49ers, with 24
yep,
points a game. Their defense, they rank 11th in total defense with 311 yards allowed per game, which they're right behind the 49ers on that, who are 10th. So seventh in pass defense. So we'll see if maybe this game the Niners do go more run heavy. Because right now the Seahawks give up 128 rushing yards a game. That sounds like a big Jordan Mason opportunity. Get him to that 25 to 30
for
carry
sure.
mark, right, and just run the ball, down the Seahawks' throats, and then use the run game to open up the pass game, right? As Mason gets
Yep.
his 6-7 yards of carry here and there, it'll naturally open things up for them. So it's going to be a tough game for them. Again, I can't say it's going to be a guaranteed win. It's going to be a tough, grinded out win, and it's probably going to come down to the fourth quarter, the final few possessions. And the key thing, as Kyle Shanahan was saying, for the Niners, it's turnovers, right? The last game, 3 turnovers. If they can take care of the ball, they will probably win this game. And then I remember you had some numbers you wanted to throw out about the Niners' chances when it comes to making the playoffs. Can you throw those out for us?
Yeah, it was pretty surprising what I read this afternoon, but The Athletic had some numbers for all across the league and all across all teams. But right now, as it currently stands, the chance to make the playoffs for the 49ers is 49%, and 42% to win the division, which is the highest odds in the NFC West. So again, like Papa J said in the comments there, the NFC West is so shit this year that we still have a chance to, probably win it by winning 10 games. That's kind of like the sweet number that I'm looking at right now in terms of what it'll take to win the division. Obviously, that's super far away. Anything could happen between now and the end of the season. But we still have some of the highest odds to make the playoffs given our current situation. So, um, like we're talking about, Sandeep, if we take care of business, on Thursday, if the Niners take care of business, like how they're supposed to take care of business, how we thought they would take care of business against the Rams and the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
If they can put together a complete game, playing all 4 quarters and all 3 phases of the game, I don't see a reason why they can't beat the Seahawks. I mean, yeah, defensively the Seahawks are pretty good in the secondary, but like you said, 128 rush yards per game. We can definitely take advantage of that in the trenches. So offensive line has to come out and prove itself this week as well. Give Purdy time to throw the ball, create the lanes that they've created so well last year in the run game, and we should see a win.
Yeah, like you mentioned in the beginning of the show, this is another opportunity for them, a get right game. And it's a game like this where you find out the character of the 49ers, right? How are they going to respond to a bad loss, a game in which they should have won, right? On a short turnaround now against a tough division opponent. We'll see what the 49ers are made of. Games like this is when you find out. And this could very well be a game that makes or breaks the season for the 49ers. And I don't think that's an overstatement by any means. So
No.
we'll see what version of the 49ers comes out on Thursday. And it's funny because my dad last week commented that the Niners were going to go 8-9, and I laughed at that. And right now I'm not laughing at it much, given the way the game went on Sunday. So again, we'll see if the Niners can get right on Thursday Night Football against the Seahawks in Seattle. Winner of that game will take the lead in the division. Hopefully when we hop on this show next time, we're talking about a 49ers dub. So thank you guys all for tuning in. Yeah, let's get this dub. Thank you guys all for tuning in. Thank you for the comments. Subscribe to the Deep Dive on YouTube. Follow Aman on Instagram and Twitter. Follow myself on Instagram and Twitter. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.